Okay, everyone. Welcome to the last chapter of this Mindset, Communication, and Emotions webinar. It's a pleasure for me to have been in this journey with you to teach you something about coaching, life coaching, and everything that is related to transform your life and to find yourself like your true and full power within you. So, these workshops is part of a Urban Creatives project on well-being, healthy nutrition, and minimal waste. The project is part of our networking for integration project funded by DZS and Solidarity Corps. So big shout out to you guys, Youth Included and European Solidarity Corps. So as you know, I am Luis Alfonso Reyes Aldaco, life coach and human rights advocate. Welcome again to this Coaching plus Ontología del Lenguaje webinar. So what are we going to talk today about? We're going to talk about the stories of heroes and the power that the stories have in our lives. What is the impact of the stories in our well-being and in our person? So we are going to navigate how can we take the best from the stories that we create for ourselves. So let's take a look on that. The power of our narratives. It is common for everyone to recall one of these stories, archaic, ancient stories. For example, Adam and Eve, Troy, or the flood of Noah. So we feel common, we feel a brotherhood when we can relate to these stories. And I know that it feels far from talking of well being and coaching, but I need to present you how influenced you are because of the stories that you share with people or you live by yourself. So, what is the true impact of these stories? Even though that these stories have thousands of years, they are still living by ourselves. And we're not going to only talk about these stories. We're going to talk about stories itself. So, I want you to bring back the narrative that you're telling to yourself and the commonality that we have between us because of our common stories. And I need to present to you one principle of ontología del lenguaje, which is we are storytellers. We live telling stories, but we crave for stories. There's a reason why we gore every night a season in Netflix, for example, or why there's a need to watch movies, why we feel so influenced and magnetized to watch movies and to read books. It's because we need stories. We are telling ourselves stories. So we are part of a collective story. But also, there's an individual story that we are creating ourselves with our lives. So have you ever think to yourself or like within you, what is the story that you're telling to yourself? Or on which story are you living by right now? So this is like a coaching question that I want to tell you or ask you actually. So what is important part like what is important role of this? One of the principles of ontología del lenguaje is that our language is not passive, it's actually an active process. So when we talk, we're not only pronouncing sounds, we're also performing acts. So when we tell something, we are creating a different world. Therefore, the stories that we're telling are also changing the world. So we create stories, but also the stories can create us. And I want you to think deeply. And I want you to think that as a wake up call. And I want you to take this moment to realize that everything that you're doing right now is because you're living in a collective or individual story. But let's break up into smaller parts of this. For example, money, it's part of a common narrative. We can say that, for example, currency is part of a narrative construction. There is no reason why uh, there is a specific material that has a specific value. When we show a $100 bill to a baby, this baby will only see a piece of paper. But why is it so difficult, for example, to burn it on fire? It's just paper, right? But we put ourselves on a story and we collectively arrange a price for this thing. So I don't want. I'm not talking about conspiracy stories. I'm not talking about reptilians or something. I'm talking about something that is happening right now. That there is no real value on things, but there's a human value on the things. There's a narrative behind. There is a collective speech. There is a collective construction that we have arranged ourselves to construct this economy that we are living by. And I'm not judging. I'm not saying that this is correct or wrong. I'm just saying that this is what is happening. And that's why the market is so volatile, because our ideas, our social constructions can change every day. We have, for example, the idea of Bitcoin or these uh, cryptocurrencies, that they are being inflated or deflated just by the narrative of people. So this is something that we can talk about. And I just want to give you an example. I'm not judging, and I want to be respectful with every idea, and I'm not trying to suggest you to think something different. I just want to show you some explanation behind. For example, capitalism is fueled by the narrative of eternal economical growth. But if you see behind, it is only the narrative which is fueling capitalism. I'm not saying again that this is wrong or this is correct. I'm just saying that there's a narrative. We can talk and discuss the same for socialism or for any other theory of economic. But the important part of it is that there is a story behind a whole economical system. So why don't we put attention to the stories that we tell to ourselves or to us? Why are we not aware or conscious of the power that words have in these matters? We think that money is something solid and something that we can just grab. But in the end, it's just part of a more bigger, more complex narrative that we have. So, coming back to the idea of money and how it is a narrative, I want to share with you one thought that I had, which is every day we are working and every day we're doing something because we have the narrative of a better future, which is not per se something true or false because everything can change. But what I'm saying is that we are fueled by this idea of something better to us. We wake up with the idea, with the goal, with the dream of reaching something better for ourselves. So the power within is actually the story that we tell. And this is something that I want you to revise. Ask yourself, every day that you're going to work, what do you tell to yourself? Why or what is the reason behind everything that you do in your pursuit of happiness, in your pursuit of wealth? And again, this is not about judging, this is only about revising. And me as a coach, I can help you to channel yourself to find yourself your own answers. So let's go back to the principal topic, which is the power of narratives. We say that money is part of one of it. But what about the others? We can talk also about worshiping God. And again, not judging. I'm just saying that if you worship God in your way, or let's not call it God, let's call it a divine power or something bigger, it's because you're part of a narrative. And I'm not saying that God exists or not. This is not what I want to imply. What I want to imply is that the way that you are living your spirituality, it can be because there was a story behind. If you are from one of these 5 or 6, 7 major religions in the world, there must be behind some story of a pattern of how to live your own spirituality. So again, I'm not saying that this is correct or wrong. I'm just saying that we need to be, or the invitation is to be aware of how do we live this path of spirituality. And also, I want to ask you, what are your morals? Is your morals also conducted by these religions that you are maybe being part of? Do you have your own morals for yourself? Do you created your own path of morality? So if you can feel it, the the way that I want you to think is to think broadly and to discuss about what is it there, what is it going on in your life, and how are you experience the divine power that might be around us. And let's think for a moment that no religion exists. What will happen with us? What's the benefit of religions? What is the problem with religions? What is the real sense of having a religion? And what will happen to these people, or what will happen to people if they lost this sense of spirituality? So, in summary, what is the real power of this narrative about worshiping something more divine than us? And let's talk about the third major narrative, which is your nation. The way that you speak, the way that you cook, the way that you dress, the way that you behave, the way that you call yourself is part of something bigger, a common narrative. If you call yourself a European, it's because there's a history behind, right? If you call yourself American, African, Asian, or a person from Oceania, how do you call yourself? Based on what? Based on which story behind? So, what do we have as a characteristic from our national common history? When we talk to people abroad, Do we find ourselves common with the stories that they have, or do we find ourselves far from them because of the stories that we have? And also, what is the impact that our national stories have on us? For example, in my home country, we have a story of a sense of resentment towards some European powers, let's say. But how is this narrative affecting on people? How is this narrative actually affecting on the well-being of people? And what about other countries? Countries that were living in precarious or difficult times before. How is a national story affecting a psychological common story? And how are we putting ourselves barriers because of our nations? Or how do we feel connected with other nations? And this is something that I want to ask you. What do you find in common? What is the commonality? What is the barrier that you're putting in front of people because of these national identities? How would it be a world without nations, without physical, well, without legal barriers, just physical barriers, of course? And your language, coming back to this topic, is how it is connecting you with people. How is your language, your common language, your national language, allowing you to observe things differently? For example, I can say that from a Spanish point of view, we tend to create a more complex way of talking that in English. And this is my impression. Maybe you can be different with me, and I will accept that. But my impression is that the way that I speak is the way that I live. And when I speak with people with different nationalities, I also see that. We have the Slavic families, we have the Germanic families, we have the Latin families, talking only about Indo-European families, but we have all over the world different languages and different ways of observing the world. So how are you biased by your own language? What will happen if you didn't speak any language? What will happen if you have no language to communicate? How will be your behavior? How will be your thoughts? So I just want you to think for a second. I know that today is a Thursday. Thursday here in Central Europe, it's after afternoon, and maybe you just finished your day of your Labor Day. But maybe we can have this moment to for think for a second. What are the stories that constitute you? We talk only about common stories, but what about those personal stories? What about that thing that happened to you when you were a child? What about the most difficult time in your life? What about your dreams, the future? So, what is it? Is the past, the present, the future, your family story, or maybe it is your company, or maybe it's something that is happening right now that is constituting you as you are because of a certain story. Or maybe let's talk about the three big topics. It's economic. What is your pursuit of wealth? What do you want for this? What is your bigger goal? What are you able to do to get stability in your life? Or talking about religion or spirituality, what do you believe is going to happen after you die? What is your thought about it? Are we going to disappear? Is there going to be something different? Is it going to be like the Mexican movie about we playing mariachis in a heavenly Mexican place? Or are we going to be part of something bigger, like drops of water falling in the ocean? What do you believe? And what about the country that you are? How is it shaping you? How is it shaping you to live in a different country that people around the world? When we talk about different movements, we talk about them how we perceive them in our countries. But how would it be to live a certain situation in a different country? Maybe violence is not affecting your country, but maybe other countries are being affected by. What about racism? What about mm, nationalism, chauvinism? How would it feel? How would it feel to be someone different? For instance, someone in Africa, in Europe, America, in Asia. And this is a moment to reflect. So, if we are moving to, we need to declare that we are creating our story, right? And we say that we have a common story, we have a personal story, but what about creating our own story? So, for that, we need to talk about the ingredients for our story. The first is the characters. And you can see that behind I put the tarot because it gives us the best example for a pattern of a story. You have the characters, you have the metaphorical movements. So many philosophers and sociologists and psychologists have realized that there's always a common pattern for creating a story, which is the hero, the villain, the allies or friends, nature, because you're always in a certain space, and there's always a divine power, right? If you talk about Lord of the Rings, you can think like, okay, maybe this the ring itself. If you think about Harry Potter, maybe you can think about the magic itself. There's always something bigger, something which is divine, something which is greater than us. So, who are your allies right now in this moment? Who are your enemies? On whom is behaving like your enemy in this moment? Who's the hero? What is the place that you're living? How is the not nature, but let's say what is the reality of the place that you're living? Is it helping you to improve? Is it actually undermining your growth? And what about the contact with something bigger or something divine? Are you allowing it to be part of you? Do you deny it? Do you feel different? So this is the ingredients that we have for our story. But also there's another element for every story, which is time. Time is fundamental because it doesn't matter if you have great ideas of characters for your story if there is no time, if there is not a fluctuant uh, perceive of time, which means that there is a moment. For example, for the hero tends to fall. The hero feels trapped. The hero falls from the childhood, let's say, have a problem, and then learn and then succeed, right? So you can see currently and consequently the pattern of time in the story. So, what is the time for you right now? Is the moment for you to learn? Is the moment for you to fight? Is the moment for you to celebrate what you have been achieving right now? Or maybe it's the time to find something different, to find new allies, to fight for your dreams. What is the time right now for you? What is the moment, the particular moment of this story in your own story? So we have talked about it. We have talked about how we are, we have a common personal narrative. What is the ingredients for it? But now what? So what? What is important of this? Relevance of this? The thing is that the most important thing is that there are some lessons to learn. And there are four that I want to share with you. The first one is to be open to changes. The second one is responsibility, decision, and meaning or purpose of life. So, what I want to tell you is that as we say that we create stories, and logically, these stories are actually building us, we feel that we are powerless because it's the stories that are creating me. But what I want to tell you, I want to share with you, is that we have the power to be the storyteller, the screenwriter of these stories. Therefore, you can change your life by changing your stories, your personal story. So the first part of it is it's that we need to be open to changes. And as Heraclitus, the Greek philosopher, said, no man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man. Life is fluctuating, life is changing every time. But we denied sometimes the change. We feel and we are part of a narrative that says that like people don't change. And it's partially true, but we are changing every day. Every single thing is changing us. This webinar is changing me, for example, because I'm holding it, but maybe it's changing you, not drastically, maybe drastically, but it's happening something which is changing. So the thing that we need to understand is that changes can happen. We can be passive here and we can expect that nature or the story, God, is going to change our lives. But what if we are the one who pressed the reality to take some changes, to create something different for us? What if we declare that we want something to change in our life? Something to stop happening or something to start happening? So the invitation here is to take power, to take your account, to change your story. The second one is decision. Is that every day we are taking decisions. Not taking decision is a decision per se. So when we observe and we realize that everything is a decision, we feel better. We feel full of power. For example, we tend to say, I must go to work. I need to go to work. And we feel the burden in our arms and we feel the big, heavy weight of needed to go to work. But what happens when we say, I choose to go to work? I choose to perform in my job to have a better future. I choose to go there to show myself that I can live happy, fulfilled. So, how do you feel less heavy, let's say, when you say, I must go, or when you say, I choose to go? I choose to take this decision. And also, something that is happening is that people are affecting us. But what happens when we change the narrative and we say that we decide to react on this behavior? When we realize that it's our decision to react or not react, when we actually realize that we are or we have the power to decide whether to react or not, then we feel powerful. And then we feel connected with something within us, which is our personal power. And this will connect us with something different, which is responsibility. When we take responsibility in our life, when we realize that we have the power to change, when we stop blaming nature, God, family, society, economies, we stop blaming that and we take our account, we feel powerful. And it's connected with decisions because it's something that we can decide. We decide to be responsible. And a little secret, we actually like responsibility because when we have responsibility, we have power. And not in a metaphorically or in a way of being a dictator. Power in the healthy power, the power to change. And the last but not least lesson is the purpose of life. And my friends, maybe this is the hardest part of all, to free ourselves to be artists in our lives. You know, according to some historians and some scientists, 70 to 80% of our jobs are going to be changed to intelligent into artificial intelligence. So what is going to be rest for us? Art. Art and the divine power to create stories. To create stories with our lives. To live in a way that we can impact people. To live in a way that we can be an example. Because only being an example for people can make ourselves to transcend from our lives. So the real power within us is when we free ourselves or all the things that we learn in life and we are actually in contact with us. Why I'm saying that with us? I'm not saying with something divine, I'm something bigger, something like a friend. Because I like to observe when we go to the park with my little boy, I realize that kids, they don't have any boundary. They don't have any thought. They don't have any preconception. And when I see the adults around them, everything is gone. What is the purpose of your life? Why or what is the reason that you are here? What is your mission in this plane or in this dimension? What do you want to give to people? What do you want to transcend? What are the things that you need to get rid of to be in contact with yourself, with your true self? So these, my friends, are the questions that I want to give to you. And if they help you to find the answers to connect to yourself, that will be an accomplished mission from me. And with this, I want to thank you all for the attention. I want to thanks once again, Youth Included, for being a collaborator and also for being um, a person who believes in these matters. I want to thank Natalia, who's here. I want to open the mic if everyone has a question. Natalia, I don't know if there's any question from Facebook side, or I see there's a Fiorella Salcedo.
Yeah, let me check that because I was I was listening to what you're saying and didn't check the Facebook.
No.
But I wanted to ask you one question.
Tell me.
Are you familiar with hero's journey concept?
Yeah, sure.
I think what you've described in one of the parts of today's presentation fits into that.
I have this concept from Carl Jung. But there are also other authors that they talk about it. But yeah, basically it's the same principle. It's the principle of the hero.
Yes.
And do you find something particularly interesting from it?
Well, I think this hero's journey is very useful tool when it comes to I don't know, working with people, and I used it in different workshops. And I remember that the results were very interesting, and it allows people to go very quickly into this kind of scheme, which is presented through the hero's journey. So it's of course it's a simplified idea, but when you have only like 1 hour, it can be helpful. So that's why I wanted to ask if you know it, just in case.
Yeah. It's actually really powerful, this idea of the hero journey. It gives you a different feeling, as you said. And it's something within us. It's something that is not outside. It's something that we have inside.
Yeah.
Because in a certain way, we always try to be the hero. So it is actually really helpful. No. Okay.
Well, I'm checking on Facebook, but I don't see any questions.
No, right?
Yes.
All right. So I think that will be all from my side.
Thank you very much.
No, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. So I will stop the share and I will stop the. Wait. Did it stop Facebook Live?
No, I can still see the icon. Yeah, now it's gone, but the recording here is still in Zoom.
Oh God, I need to stop.